Alrighty. Some of you are going to be getting deja vu. It's just having misting rain at the moment. I checked the forecast again. Well, not again, but again, but just this morning. And it said 70% chance of rain. And I don't know if it's going to be one of those annoying misting rains that just hangs around all day or what. What I do know is, although I didn't show it yesterday, I've got a substantial amount done. All this crap is all around here. This has just collapsed right out to here, basically. One I cut down and never really got to move. It needed a lot more cutting up, which left me with a few extra bits to be able to get smaller pieces to separate from each other. Otherwise it was just going to be too heavy to lift it all up. A fair bit of it went into that stack there. I cleaned up a lot of old bullshit over here, especially around there. There's a lot of, when the camera sees it, a lot of stuff around here was just like burnt, but still like a whole bunch of little sticks about as thick as my finger, and turfed those onto there. A few other bits and pieces around there. I just got one out of right there, and I've been throwing a lot of that down the bottom there. You can see some of the old charred crap I've thrown on that heap there. So there's about 2 or 3 boxthorns there, and I've packed more stuff in. There's a lot of gaps and stuff, and you have trouble getting it to burn because of the lack of density. And then I sort of got the smarts up last night, and those grass clumps. Now I'll show you. By the way, she's lovely and muddy, and I mean it's sticky in the way that it'll stick to your boots. Yes, that's right, big hunks like that stick to your boots. But it's also slippery as hell, which doesn't really make it good when you're trying to carry a whole bunch of prickles above you, because you really need good traction for that. Anyway, a lot of this stuff here, these ones aren't too bad, but all the ones down the hill especially, all down there, they're crap. A lot of this, I've plucked the dry dead crap out of, and most of these are reasonably firm still. There's a bit of green amongst the dry dead stuff, but a lot of this dead stuff, you come up to it. I mean, I've done all these ones. That's actually had a whole bunch pulled out of it, so is that. And you just go to pull the dry crap. It's a bit like this stuff. Well, that is the actual stuff. Or is that planted there? No, that's actually planted there. I thought that was me. I've stuffed a bunch of, there you see, bit there, bit over there. Yeah, it's all, vast majority of it grew in 2010 and has been going rotten ever since. And it pulls straight out without a problem. It's all dry. My father's always going, oh, but the sheep are eating that and whatnot. And it's all grey. And when you look closely, there's all these little dots of mould. And I mean, it's not so prevalent on this stuff, but it's really bad down the bottom. And it's just like, it doesn't even look anything like this colour. It looks a hell of a lot more grey. And it's all rotten. And the sheep ain't eating it. And if they did, it's like a person eating newspaper. It's just crap. There's no nutrition in it. There's no nothing. But I need a bit more density, so I was walking around plucking out a lot of this sort of stuff and just jamming it in here. Not a great deal, but I always wondered if I should buy some hay and jam it in here, and I thought, what's the point of buying hay if you've got all these clumps of grass, all this dead crap that's going to come straight out that you can just pack in. So I did do that for a little while. It is going to need more of that at some point. Trouble is, there's not that many clumps just around here. But when you sort of get over past this stack and that, there's heaps of them down further. Even against the fence line, there's another strip that goes up there. There's barely any grass clumps, and then, yeah, just past this line of rocks and that, the grass clumps sort of start up again. So anyway, that's something that I probably going to have a bit of a go at some point. You know, it's sort of probably better now than spring when it's all got green grass through it. But having said that, I still need to get enough traction to get around and whatnot and not have it raining all the time. But we do really need rain. But, you know, if it rains, I can't work. If it doesn't rain, we're going to have another bunch of sheep looking as skinny as rakes. Sort of, I'd actually prefer if it did rain. But and then I'd just go and do something in the house, like all those damn drywall that I bought, put all that up inside the house, and I've got to do some palings and that in there as well. So it's not as though I'm without stuff to do if it does rain. This is just ridiculous. I don't know how far I'm going to really get if this gets any wetter, because I might be standing upright, especially not carrying crap like this. But anyway, I was continuing the whole clean-up. I'm tempted to get the bonfire, the wood heater thingy going again, because I've got a bunch more of this crap. It still needs to be burnt. Another dead one that I've still yet to break up. Another 2 more which are basically dead. Some of the ones I've been burning already, they're rotten and they don't have any bark on them. And this does have a bit of bark, so it's not entirely rotten. A lot of them also have a lot of like green shoots like that. Some of the base is still going, but then you've got entire branches that are just crap. And the ones that are rotten, this is sort of a little bit harder, I believe. But the ones that are rotten, you literally just start rocking the branch back and forward, and it will just literally crack out of the base, and then you lift it out. And then you just snap all the bits like that off by hand and just start feeding it in to the little wood heater fire pit thingy-majigger. Yeah, these might need to be cut. Having said that, they are terrible on reciprocating saw blades, chainsaw chains, any of that sort of stuff. They blunt things exceedingly quick. Very high level of silica. I've blunted drill bits just playing around with these things. They are surprisingly high in silica. Anyways, might go and get one of my old shit blades and have a go at some of this as well. As I said, there's 2 more like this that are sort of, you know, the bark's coming off, but they're not completely rotten. Further back where the wood heater is, which is right over the other side of the hill there. There's a, you know, you can see it there. That's the other big thicket. I'm thinking of packing stuff into that big thicket, which means little leftover bits of burnt wood, stuff like this, and maybe literally some of the rotten construction wood too, and just pack it into that in an attempt to basically increase the density of it and the burnability of that patch, in a hope that I can douse her up with a good heap of diesel in the spring and burn that out. We'll see. It's not terribly nice having to come down a whole bunch of steep rocks and shit just to play with that and go back up and forward and up and back. And you try and grab stuff that's around it, but the stuff that's around it might not really be enough stuff. So, and there's another big patch, another 2 big patches there that need burning out, and one seems to look very dense but isn't dense enough, and I had a go at burning it last spring I think it was, and it didn't want to happen. Maybe it was last autumn. Yeah, didn't really happen anyway, just burned it a little bit. And then there's another one that's all collapsed as well, that I've cut down, but I reckon there's too much big stuff in that I've got to go and you know, slice up and like that, get a bit of stuff out. I've got some of it out, and some of it I've burnt already, and I think it needs more to be compressed enough. So, 2 stacks in the thicket over there. But anyway, I'm going to continue to try and trudge on with this, just so long as traction allows it. It's sort of strange. There's areas with a whole heap of grass like all that. Then you get patches like this, and the grass just doesn't grow. And it's like all there, you know. Even before I was walking up and down there, there's no grass there anyway. and then it's almost like a bloody washout. For some reason, in the base of this, where those rocks are there, in the base of that, it's like fucking pissing wet. Seriously wet. Almost like as though there's been runoff from the hill and then it's just caught in a little patch there or something, and I mean, it's like really wet. So, you can sort of almost, you know, like yesterday this wasn't as bad, and I went down, and as I was throwing stuff against there, I realised how wet it was. It's almost really like it's just sort of run down and then just stopped at that point there, but anyway. Yeah, continue on. Who knows what that is? Just, it's a big stack they've been chucking stuff on further down the hill. That's where I had we lit that up and the flames were absolutely astronomical, that patch there. And there's another one I cut down. I don't know if they didn't roll down actually. I'm standing up looking at that. I can see all these lumps. It's just all little white dots you can see now. I've seen this at vineyards. In fact, there was massive amounts of it at the vineyard my father worked at. It was almost entirely this stuff all laying around everywhere. It was almost completely made up of this stuff. By the way, that's a little iron ore nugget that I just plucked off the edge of that burrow. That's limestone. Iron ore nuggets and limestone. Now, if I hit some really good coal, then we've got everything we need to smelt steel. Well, at least the materials, not the bloody smelter, but you get what I'm saying. Quite surprising. I don't think I'm going to find coal other than little tiny chunks that relatives left behind years ago, but that's just intriguing. I really didn't quite realise that I had limestone here. Long story short, high-grade limestone plus high-grade, how will I say this, not ground up, sand-like consistency iron ore, and high-grade coal, all of them ground up, the limestone, the coal and the iron ore, put into the furnace in the right way will give you steel. And that's exactly how they smelt steel in this country. I doubt any of this is good enough grade to really do anything. But you can also make cement out of it. In fact, all they do is essentially burn the limestone. I think they get a whole shitload of timber or coal or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but they burn the limestone and that makes cement. And that's the old way they done it in the 1800s, early days of setting up this part of the country. And a bit of that occurred not a terribly far distance from where I am. Anyway, just sort of intriguing, you know. I got so many different soil types and stuff around here, and you know, this is sort of a brownish clay, and I got the more black clay up there, and I got the sandy stuff over there, and the front of the property's got the grey sandy stuff, and then we find some limestone, and I used to think it's probably still down here, I actually got orange soil down here as well, and more orange than that, but yeah, a lot of these are old burrows that have been abandoned years ago. What would that be? Yeah, that's nothing. Anyway, got a dirty grey tussock behind me that I've got to get out, so I'll grab that too. What was about that? Little box thorns here, obviously. You got this, still sort of sitting in the ground. Actually, the roots are still in the ground. Strangely enough, often enough when I have a cluster of box thorns, there will be, most likely on the higher side of the hill, there'll be this old stump from years back. I mean, that one is literally, as you can see, still stuck in the ground. It's, you know, pretty weak. It's rotted. I think at some point somebody went around and cut all these off, burnt them, quite possibly in a little fire pit thing or something like that, because there's no signs of even old charcoal, which will survive for years sitting on the ground. There's no signs of charcoal. And that was that. Didn't think much more of it, except the trouble was all the berries had been dropped, and bang, a few years down the track, she's all back again. This bastard cut this higher up, and it's freaking all sprouting green, as you can see all through there. Bloody thing. Anyway, been burning a little fire pit thingy quite a bit, and yeah, getting rid of some of those other strange bushes. Found one of the ones I was looking at, talking about and cutting into. Is some of them are rotten, like some of the branches on it are already rotten, so I've busted off the rotten branches just by hand and gone and, yeah, whacked them in, or whacked a lot of the finer stuff in, and some of the thicker parts are just sitting behind, beside it. But the other ones that are stuffed, you know, I might just leave them 2 or 3 years and let them rot on their own, instead of fighting like a dog trying to cut through and watching it blunt every damn blade I use. And yeah, just let it go a few years and bust it off and deal with it then. It's not so much of a problem because it's not a weed, it doesn't spread easily, and it doesn't have prickles. And yeah, it's not a very big priority. It's a bit like the priority of cleaning up underneath some of these peppercorn trees. Is no big hurry at all. Not considering the amount of flaming firewood I've got now, and I don't really, you know, I've got bigger fish to fry, which would be these things, and I've got no shortage of firewood, to the point that even all the box thorns that have been burnt out, you know, I haven't even cut some of them up for firewood, because I've just left the dead stalks in the ground because I'm absolutely overloaded with bloody pine and enough boxthorn and random crap up there already. Never mind all the jungle stuff that I got into and all the cypress pine that's recently come out of that. Just doing that for someone who I know likes the noise. No, I had a look at lunchtime, and we already had 1/8 of an inch in the gauge. So, and I think most of that actually come last night. And we just had spits and spats during the day, and well, looks now it's getting a little bit more serious. Might be in for a flaming fair bit of rain tonight. Not heaps, but you know what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised if this sort of goes on and off all night. But this is not just spitting like it was before. It's you know, we're getting a little bit of an output in all of this, as you can no doubt hear. And now the line. I really should go down and chuck a bit more stuff in that wood heater, but it's good in a way. Like, if you burn something on the ground, it just doesn't get the heat. But once it's inside that circular, you know, cylinder of steel, the radiant heat keeps bouncing back into itself, and it'll survive a little bit of rain in through the top. And also any rain against the side of the cylinder, it just, you know, evaporates as soon as it hits it, sort of thing, just turns straight to steam. And it's surprising how you can sort of have light drizzle the entire time that's going without a problem at all. Chucking in wood that's dripping wet, and it just keeps going, you know. If you were to try and light that on the ground, not a friggin' hope. Not a hope. But as soon as it's got all the radiant heat beam back in towards itself, and you've got that steel, you know, with the heat conductivity that, you know, makes any rain evaporate off it straight away, it goes pretty well. But anyway, I'll have a little drink of something and then go and refill this little wood heater again. I really should be planting those. I should be doing still back down doing the boxthorn, but yeah, can't really use a reciprocating saw in this, but I'm actually working more on, instead of pissing around over this side of the hill, I'm actually working more on that side of the hill now. So there's a lot of smaller stuff that got half burned out, and a lot of it I cut off, but I just haven't rolled it into a single pile, so I was just doing that. Bloody cut myself a bit there with one of the prickles. And I sort of come up here to get the lops because one of them was intertangling and pissing around, and to get me lops and go and sort that out wherever the hell they'll be around here somewhere. Yeah, be in here somewhere. Anyway, yeah, I'll find him in a second. Oh, I don't think you can see him. There's a kangaroo down there. There's those other dots, that's cows, and then he's a lot closer, but it's getting too dark. Yeah, he was there the other week too. Anyway. Boxthorn excavations. I shit you not. A couple of prickles. Dig holes 2 inches deep. It's hard to bloody believe it, but it's the old boxthorn swinging in the wind. It's quite amazing. You know, I mean, the little channels where those two things are 2 inches deep, but even then, you know, it's even built it up at the end here and everything. Strange stuff, eh? There's another one down here too, actually. I think it's just this little one here. I dug out a little patch. Bit hard to see in the camera, but it's crazy old stuff. And I really don't know the story behind all of this here. All the rocks. I tend to think it's natural. Other people reckon it's all horses are brought in to drag all these down. Why didn't they sort of just keep rolling, you know? Maybe some did. It's, yeah. It's so definitive that if I go over other side of the valley over there and look back, I can actually see this. And I'm pretty certain you can see from Google Maps too. This entire line of rocks that just follows on through, and it's strange. Because it's almost like the soil is higher, like as though when I go from here to here, like there's a 2-foot drop in the bloody height of the soil as well, which is also intriguing. Who knows, maybe they wanted to flatten this out more. Here's the one fault that all sort of dips in here, and then you're missing most of them just for there. Not missing the boxthorn, but you know, it's actually been rolled down here. It's yeah, and it all sort of just curves in, down. Every time it rains, this sort of ends up always oof, coming through here because of the way it's all curved either side. I'll get back and show it a bit more obviously. There you go. Starts there, dips down, comes back up about here. Anyway, couldn't find the damn lots, but got the weapon of choice, the bloomin' $120 Falco number 7, I think it is. I think that's what it is. Might be number 9, I forget. Roll handle anyway. And yeah, I'm trying to roll a lot of stuff into that stack there. So I shall continue on. At times I used to come down here with buckets and a bit of barb. More so for just this area here, burnt out, and just around here. And fill all the buckets up with all the blooming offcuts and stuff from dealing with, cutting down the boxthorns. And then you go back with those buckets full of stuff that are all little short offcuts. And some are only like about 4 or 5 inches long, and maybe only 1.5 inches in diameter. But yeah, then you'd load the blooming wood stove up with all that sort of crap, and I could just keep coming down and keep wandering around, get another 2 buckets worth, go up, come back down again, another 2 buckets worth. And there's a bunch of that stuff sort of just sitting in the bottom there. But anyway, got to continue on trying to get some of these down. Don't know if it's even worth getting the reciprocating saw at this point, but it's just getting too dark, and it's still trying to flip and stop raining, and then it's just sort of spitting still. But it's good in a way. It seems to rain at the night here, so you don't sort of get stuffed up because of rain all the time, because when it does really get rolling is at night, and then you're inside because it's dark anyway. So this is me trying to fight with this stupid bitch of a thing intertwining with this. See, let's lose a bit of grip. There's some of those little bits I was saying about under there, just the odds and sods and offcuts. So yeah, there's another bit of blasted wire. Anyway, oh yeah, the Zippo saw under my arm there. Yeah, as I suspected. You ain't gonna see a great deal. Might as well explain how I deal with handling these, rolling them into other ones. When you cut them off at the base, first of all, you shouldn't cut too low, because you're going to need to come back and cut a second time and then paint that with glyphosate or some other such herbicide. That's the reason I've got so many little offcuts and extras, is because the initial cut to make it, well, cut the bulk of the plant away from the trunk, and then a secondary cut when I cut the trunk later to paint stuff on. It may all seem as though, why don't you do it all in the one hit? Yeah, sounds like a good idea until you're actually out here. You cut something, you got to push like hell even to get your blade out, you get your blade stuck, and the weight of this massive thing is not going to move away from its stump without a bloody big push. In which case I don't have the strength of a front end loader, so it ain't going to happen that quickly. The other thing was I often used to do the secondary cut with the chainsaw, yeah, chainsaw cuts a lot quicker. If you got to put the herbicide on the open wound. Now, if it's let to sit for friggin' 2 hours or not even 2 hours, it'll seal up, and then we won't take the damn herbicide in, quite possibly. Having said that, as I've just said, on their own, some of them are far too big to move. So what I go and do with those, and even with the smaller ones that I could move, but I'd be just about shitting my pants to move, I go and cut out the larger trunk parts, and I basically go and cut the smaller branches that are, 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches off of the main trunk. And then in that, you grab each one of those individual ones and pull them away from the rest. And sometimes they'll come, other times they won't. You might end up taking 2, maybe even 3 in one hit. And then you know, 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 or whatever, you pull them all out of the bush. And of course, each one of those ones that you pull out is light enough to easily carry anywhere. You know, and you might need to do some extra trimming or play around with lops or, you know, reciprocating saw or whatever to separate them out. At times they just will not separate. So you've got to basically grab the whole lot. And sometimes they're too heavy and you just got to get a rake or a shovel or something and actually just roll them by pushing it. But if you sort of cut all the little stuff that's an inch or an inch and a half off the main trunk and pull hard enough, you should be able to unentangle most of them and then carry them all individually to the stack, so then it's not so heavy because you've only got a whole bunch of smaller bits. Trouble is, all these things love intertwining and the prickles love intertwining, so it's a lot harder than it sounds. It's a lot harder compared to most plants. But at the end of the day, that's the best option you got, to break it up into bits that are big enough for you to carry, and when they're all gone, you are left with a big hunk of firewood, which, yeah, as you know, I've been using quite a lot of boxthorn firewood, and this hunk that it's pointed at the moment, which you can't see, is some pretty bloody big hunks in it. Not the biggest, but oh look, the base that I've cut it off is one of the bigger ones. Looking at it from here, I'd say it's probably only 4 inches one way, but about 8 inches the other way, sort of an oval shape. Anyway, I shall continue to try and flatten this second battery while I can still see what I'm doing, even if the camera really can't.